All right, today we're diving into the incredibly high-stakes world of corporate innovation. I mean, it's basically a battlefield where finding that next big idea is, well, it's everything. We're going to look at how companies are using some seriously powerful AI to get an edge, but also why, in this new reality, having a strong ethical compass might just be the ultimate secret weapon. Let's get into it.
So let's start with this number right here, 3.55 million. That's the number of patent applications filed around the world in a single year. Just think about that for a second. It's not just a lot of data, it's a tidal wave of new ideas. For any company trying to find the next breakthrough, manually sifting through all of that it's pretty much impossible.
So that really leads us to the central question, doesn't it? When the next game-changing innovation is buried under a literal mountain of data, how on earth do you find it? The old-school, traditional methods, they just can't keep up anymore. The answer, as you're about to see, lies in teaching machines how to do the hunting for us.
And this brings us right to our first section, where we're going to dig into this massive challenge that we're calling the innovation overload. We're talking about a problem so big that the old playbook for finding new technology, it's officially broken.
Just look at this contrast here. It's night and day. On one side, you have traditional scouting. It's slow, it's manual, it's full of human bias and blind spots. You've got analysts spending months just sifting through limited sets of data. But then on the other side, you've got this new AI-led approach. It's automated, it's global, and it is unbelievably fast. I mean, we're talking about taking a process that used to eat up months and crushing it down to just days, sometimes even hours.
Now, to really get how this is even possible, we kind of have to pop the hood and decode the technology that's making it all happen. So in this next section, we're going to break down the relationship between AI, machine learning, and deep learning and see how they all fit together.
You know, a great way to think about this is like a set of nesting dolls. Artificial intelligence, or AI, that's the biggest doll. It's the whole idea of making machines smart. Then you open it up, and inside you find machine learning. This is where machines learn from data all on their own, without us having to code every single rule. And then, inside that, you've got the smallest, but maybe the most powerful doll, deep learning. This is what uses these complex things called neural networks to find hidden patterns in just massive, messy piles of data.
Deep learning is really fascinating stuff, because it's inspired by our own brains. The cool thing is, it doesn't need perfectly organized, clean data. You can feed it raw, unstructured information, like, say, the text of millions of patents or scientific articles, and it will literally teach itself to find the important connections and features. And that ability to make sense of chaos, that's what makes it such a powerhouse. Okay, so now that we've got a handle on the tech, let's see how it's actually used in the real world to turn that giant data haystack into actual strategic insight. This is where the theory gets real. The value here really breaks down into three key things. First, the obvious one, sheer speed and global coverage. But it's way more than just being fast. Second, it hugely improves what we call the signal-to-noise ratio. It's brilliant at filtering out all the junk to find the really high-quality leads. And third, and this is super important, it can even help figure out if a new technology is a good business fit by looking at things like risk or how easily it could be integrated.
So how does it actually do it? How does it work in practice? Let's get specific and look at three really powerful techniques that companies are using right now to find that proverbial needle in the data haystack.
First up, we have patent mining. An AI can scan millions of patents, automatically group them by topic, and spot emerging trends. A perfect real-world example of this? Toyota. Years before they made any big public announcements, AI analytics saw that Toyota was filing a huge number of patents related to solid-state batteries. It was this clear, data-driven signal that they were about to dominate the next generation of electric vehicle tech. Next, we have something called semantic search. Now, this is not your typical keyword search on Google. This is about understanding meaning and context. The AI can actually read complex technical documents and grasp what they're about, finding connections a human might completely miss. Airbus actually built a system just like this to help its engineers get super precise answers from thousands of dense manuals, and it massively sped up their whole R&D process.
And our third technique is building what are called scholarly pipelines. You know, a lot of times the next big thing shows up in an academic paper first. Well, AI can scan millions of these papers to find those breakthroughs way before they're ever commercialized. Pfizer does exactly this, and get this, they report saving over 16,000 hours of manual research work every single year. That's just efficiency on an incredible scale.
Of course, with all this incredible power comes a whole lot of responsibility. I mean, having the ability to scan all the world's information is one thing, but knowing where you should draw the line,
That's something else entirely. And that brings us to the absolutely crucial topic of ethics.
So, this is a really critical point to understand. The law tells you what you can do. It's the floor, right? It's the absolute baseline. But ethics is about what you should do. It's about acting with integrity, fairness, and building trust. Just because something isn't technically illegal, well, that doesn't automatically make it right.
You know, here's one of the most powerful and simple ethical frameworks you can use. It's called the front page test. It's incredibly straightforward. Before you do something, just ask yourself that simple question. If the idea of your actions being splashed across the front page makes you queasy, you're probably about to cross an ethical line.
Let's make this really concrete with a classic dilemma. Imagine your AI scouting tool finds a competitor's confidential strategic plans just sitting on a public web server. It was clearly a mistake they made, an accident, and technically accessing them isn't illegal. So, what do you do?
Well, the ethical approach is pretty clear. First, you have to acknowledge that this information was never meant for your eyes. Second, you make the conscious choice not to use it to preserve your company's integrity. Why? Because that short-term gain is almost never worth it. And that leads to step 3. You avoid the massive potential damage to your reputation, which would be far more costly in the long run than any secret you might have learned. And that really brings us to our conclusion here. Because in the end, doing the right thing, having that integrity, it isn't a handicap. It's actually the ultimate competitive advantage.
So let's just quickly recap the big takeaways. First, AI can take that crushing information overload and turn it from a problem into a huge strategic asset. Second, its real power comes from these applications that deliver faster, smarter, more relevant insights. And finally, and maybe most importantly, ethics isn't a constraint. It's a core part of a winning strategy that builds the trust you need for long-term success.
So, I'll leave you with this final thought. This technology, it's only going to get smarter and more powerful. The real question for all of us is, as these tools for finding information become practically all-knowing, will our own wisdom and our ethics be able to keep pace? That's the challenge waiting for us.